river, yeah, they'll dig at least sort of 6 feet, maybe up to 2 meters deep. Look how their trunks snake all over each other. Alright, we're going to sit here watching these elephants fighting. I believe Tristan has got a disembodied impala.
We do indeed, which is interesting. I haven't been able to go and check, and that's because we've got a juvenile Battelier eagle. You can see it's sitting on the tree there that was feeding on this impala, and so I'm hoping it's going to come back down again. It got a bit of a fright when we came around the corner and flew up onto this little tree, but I'm sure food is going to outweigh its fear, and it's going to come down and maybe start feeding on the impala leg that is below it. Now, I wonder where this impala has come from. It looks like something that has been dragged around and probably brought here by hyenas. They generally do take carcasses towards water. I've seen it a few times where they actually even drag it into water. So there you can see the leg and the shoulder blade at the back. And so I would imagine this has been stolen from a leopard somewhere. The hyenas have eaten their fill, and they've left a leg and a scapula behind, which is the perfect food for a Battelier eagle. Battelier eagles, remember, are birds that will feed off carrion, so they only feed off things that are dead, and so this is the perfect food item, particularly for a juvenile Battelier. You can see this Battelier's feet are still sort of that white grey color, and the cere itself is also a grey, which means that it is a juvenile. It's not an immature yet, so this is a still very young bird. It's probably only just left the nest, and for it, this will be the perfect snack. Now, this is about as good a visual as you're ever going to get of a Battelier. We're not too far from it, and it's sitting quite low down, and look at that. Isn't that amazing? You can see that crest that is starting. They get that big sort of bulky head, and I'm doing a little bit of preening now. When you've eaten breakfast, it's always good just to groom oneself, kind of get the feathers in good condition and make sure that you're ready for the day ahead. Isn't it incredible that that bird is going to change color to that spectacular black and white with those red feet and red face? It really is quite amazing, the change that they go under in their lifespan. It's pretty interesting just to kind of see how they change, and that the fact that it takes 7 years to get there is pretty cool as well. So I really do like Battelier eagles. They seem to have a little bit of character to them, and like I say, to just be able to see one this close and for it to sit nice and relaxed is very special. Now, I know some of you keep your bird lists, and I'm sure this is one that most of you should have. It is quite a common eagle that we see in this particular part of the world. Funny enough, outside of the Kruger National Park system in South Africa, they're very uncommon. You don't find them in too many other parts, and that's because they do feed off carrion. You see the drongo is busy dive bombing. Drongos are another story. They've got such a big heart for their size. They never shy away from a sort of fight, and you'll often find them mobbing and dive bombing eagles, trying to get them away. Now, this particular eagle is not one that they really worry about too much, and that's why the dive bombing is not incessant. If it was something like a Wahlberg's eagle, then you'd find, wait, here it comes. So you can see it's flying around. The Battelier eagle is just looking at it as though, what are you doing? I'm not going to eat you. I'm a bird that eats dead things, not live things. So there's our little fork-tailed drongo watching the eagle. As you can see, they're full of nonsense. So, Marco, you're wondering if there's any animals that will prey on the Battelier. Well, when they're in their nest as chicks, then yes, there's quite a number of animals that will prey on them. There's leopard, funny enough, that will go after them in the nest itself. You'll find snakes of varying descriptions will go after them. So they're quite susceptible in the nest. Once they leave the nest and they become sort of immature or juvenile like this, then the number of predators becomes far less. But you will find every now and then. I did see once a photo of a martial eagle with a Battelier in its talons. How that played out, I'm not quite sure. And then I've seen one or two where snakes have gotten hold of adult Battelier eagles, so it does happen. But when they sort of bigger like this, the predator numbers become far less, and it becomes a lot harder. The reason why their numbers are not very good outside of the Kruger National Park system is because of the fact that they feed off carrion, and so outside of the parks and protected areas, anytime there's a carcass that is potentially been killed by a predator and farmers think that it is something like a caracal or a jackal. They'll often poison that carcass, and so the Bateleur eagles come down to land and they feed off that carcass, and they unfortunately then get poisoned, and so that's why their numbers have dwindled quite a bit. Now, to the left of the Bateleur eagle, in the top of the little guarri tree, is a beautiful bird that's just come out. It doesn't look very pretty from the back, but from the front, it is very pretty. It's a golden-breasted bunting, as far as I can see. There we go. There they are. So you can see the back is quite drab. Now I'm hoping he's going to flick around and turn, and you'll see they've got this kind of lemon gold color on their chest that is very pretty. So there's another one for the birders. Maybe you don't have that on your list. Golden-breasted bunting is what that one is called. There we go. You can see another one is flying about there. Why are you all putting your backs to us? We want to see your chest. Come on. No. But you can see a little bit of yellow in the throat at least. Ah, the one on top is now turned. Craig, there we go. You can see that bright yellow chest. Isn't that beautiful? Amazing. So you can see now if there's a predator, they turn their backs and they sit down. They're going to really blend in very well. But when they want to display to one another and to females, then they've got that bright yellow or gold chest that can show up and everybody can see them. So really cool to see. And it seems like we're getting more and more birds coming to the party as we sit here. So not only do we have the Bateleur eagle, now we've got the golden-breasted buntings, the fork-tailed drongo. I wonder who else will arrive. And this impala carcass could be the reason why we're not seeing our squirrels. Remember earlier I was saying that maybe there's a bird of prey or there's some sort of disturbance that's happened here. And I would imagine if hyenas and Bateleur eagles have been around, those squirrels have then taken cover and tried to hide out and make sure that they're not seen. So that's probably the reason why we didn't see our squirrels on the tree. So Violet, you're wondering if this Bateleur will get sick if it eats living prey. Well, no, it's not going to get sick if it eats living prey. It's just that it's not designed to catch living prey. So if potentially it was sitting and something came right past it and it could grab it, then yes, it would. But they are not birds that hunt because they have a very short tail. It means that they're not very stable in flight, and so they've got to rely on finding things that are not really moving in order to catch them. So that's the reason why they eat carrion, and it's not because of the fact that they can't eat live prey. They definitely won't get poisoned or get sick from it. It's just that they really battle to catch live prey. Now I want to try just go forward a little bit because the angle of the sun and the sort of color of the trees and the blue sky in the background, it might be very pretty if we just go around a little bit. So let me just see. No, don't fly away. Stay where you are. There we go. That's going to be much prettier. It's now sitting, and for those of you that like screenshots, it might be a really nice opportunity to get a screenshot of a juvenile Bateleur in the beautiful sort of autumn light. You've got that blue sky in the background, a bit of sun on its face. Isn't that pretty? Also, if you look at the tail area, you can see the wings are almost overlapping and that there's very little tail visible. Now, on these Bateleur eagles, their tail, as they get older, actually gets shorter and shorter, and that's the reason why they are so unstable in flight. A longer tail helps act like a rudder and balance them, but as they get older, their tail shortens up, and they then become very, very unstable, and hence they do not go after live prey that much. Although I feel like they do fly well enough that they could potentially catch live animals, it's just that they prefer to feed on carrion. Isn't that beautiful? Very, very nice. Being very obliging, young Bateleur. So, Lara, these eagles will generally live, particularly out here in the wild, they normally live for about 14 years. So half their life is actually spent as a juvenile, which is pretty insane. You would think that, as you go from a juvenile to an adult, if you think about people, it's pretty much only, I would say, 1/8 of our life on average is spent as a juvenile, whereas these guys, it's pretty much half their life. So it's quite an amazing thing that it takes them that long. There have been ones in captivity that I've heard apparently have gone over 18, 19 years of age, but generally in the wild it's about 14. What a beautiful day it's going to be. Look at that blue sky, hardly any clouds in it. Promises to be a very, very pretty day. Now, we're going to probably leave our battle here to enjoy its breakfast. It doesn't seem like it wants to come down and eat while we're here. So I'm going to leave it to have breakfast as we start thinking about breakfast ourselves. And let's go across to James, who's got two Ellie bulls that seem to be having an argument.
They are having the most wonderful argument, and now they've decided that, well, maybe they think we are the source of their argument. But this chap, who's going to have long tusks when he's a big bull, is now standing about 2 meters from us, and he's a bit more nervous of us. Having close. It's not very special having elephants this close if they are big adult bulls, but a youngster like this is just sort of testing his strength. Now here comes but this other one is very brave because he's much smaller. I think he's losing his appetite, actually. I mean, they've been play fighting for a while, but I think the little one is now just getting a little bit sick and tired, because this chap in front of us has got substantially bigger tusks, and he is a bigger elephant, probably by about, I don't know, about 10% or so. It's the most wonderful sighting we've been having here. They've been playing up and down next to us. Yeah, and White Lady Owen, you say that his tusks are long for youngsters. They are. And I was just saying to Fergus before you came back to us, I was saying that I think that he will probably have a substantial set of tusks when he's a big bull. So I mean, I would have put him at about 12 or 13 years old, and when he's 50 he's going to have a serious set of tusks, because they will of course in theory keep growing until the day that he shakes off this mortal coil. He is so close right now and paying no attention to us whatsoever, which is exactly how we like it. Hello Francis, all the way from Israel. How lovely to hear from you. Thank you for getting hold of us, and thank you for watching the show. And you say, do elephants do the most damage here? Well, other than people, yes, they certainly have the most effect on the wilderness and on nature out here. But of course, when we use the term damage, we need to be careful, because it has a negative implication. They absolutely change the structure of the vegetation, but of course they've been in this area for millions of years, or hundreds of thousands of years. And so, do they damage the vegetation? I don't know. Do they damage individual trees? Yes, from the perspective of the trees, they absolutely do. But are they hurting the vegetation? Are they having a negative effect on the ecology of this area? I think that would be much more difficult to argue. And so I would say no, they don't damage the vegetation. They absolutely change the structure of it, though. And I think that they've been doing that forever, and I think it's absolutely fine. Now he's going to go and bully someone else. That's a young cow he's now bullying. This is quite interesting. She will be less tolerant, I suspect. He's now doing what I hate describing the most, because just the words sound horrid. He's engaging in genital sniffing, if you like, and I think she will be much less tolerant than that other bull was. I think she'll give him what for. If he irritates her, he's not big enough for her to be intimidated by him physically. Although we seem to have a little bit of young love going on here. This is interesting because, I'll tell you why it's interesting, is because a cow that does not want to mate will move away. And she's not moving away at all. That's interesting. We're going to wait and see what unpacks here, but Jamie has very bravely snuck up on similar animals and would like to tell you about how that makes her feel.
It makes me feel like it always makes me feel, which is truly privileged and also somewhat exhilarated to be in the presence of these creatures on foot. And I'm going to keep my voice down. They don't know that we're here. And we've actually got a beautiful view. Look, she's having a dust bath. This is so cool. So we're in a beautiful position here. The wind is blowing their scent straight to us, which means they're not going to smell us. And the trick now is to just stay nice and hidden. There she's going to come. We keep nice and still, because of course elephants are quite short-sighted. So any movement is going to be what attracts their attention. And we've been so lucky recently. We've had so many elephant sightings on foot. That's a big female, so it's a whole breeding herd. There's a second one on her way. There she is over there. That's really very cool. And we've got a nice open view of them, but at the same time we've got plenty of cover that we can hide behind. The trick with elephants, though, is to always be aware that there could be other members of the herd around you. And I know that Herbie's making sure that there's none on the other side of us. Yay. I love a good elephant sighting on foot. It's always very exciting. And I'm just listening very carefully. You can hear them moving through the trees. And actually, we were just here purely by accident. We were about to show you something completely different. And we heard the sound of them moving. And the two females have moved into some quite dense vegetation, so we're probably not going to follow them that way. We're just going to wait for them to slowly move past us. Getting a situation like this is actually really very lucky. You don't, a lot of the time when we're approaching elephants on foot, we're doing it very cautiously, with very little view of the elephants themselves. And that's because they're usually in quite a thick area, and we have to be so careful about where we are. But here in this kind of position, it's perfect because we're in the thick stuff. We've got the cover. And the elephants were, at least, out in the open. I don't know how big this breeding herd is. I don't know how many elephants are here. I'm pretty sure these two were the first to cross. I think otherwise we would have heard them. But we've been really, truly privileged. Where are you going? What? And you can see their body language is completely unaware of us. Ears flapping, tail relaxed. The one thing about breeding herds, if they get a sense that there's someone around them, or if they pick up your scent, what they'll very often do is come around and actually just follow your scent trail for a little bit, just to make sure that you're not trying to sneak up on them. And I find that so very intelligent. There's a real thought process going on there. Unlike a buffalo well, I suppose buffalo will circle you to get downwind, but most of the time they're intent on moving away, whereas the elephant cows want to find out what's been around, want to see what you've been up to, want to make sure. And they don't pretend. Elephant bulls pretend they haven't seen you. That's also quite entertaining. They pretend to be feeding, they pretend to be wandering off in a different direction, and then all of a sudden they stop and they circle back around. Elephant cows don't do that. They're straight up. If they pick up on you, they'll either come and investigate, or they'll circle round and they'll follow your scent to wherever you are. Not dangerous. It doesn't make for a dangerous situation. Of course, elephants on foot can be dangerous. But it's really just them doing their job and investigating. I just want to check that there isn't one coming this side, and then we can move. Oh, she's shifted as I did. Okay. And off go our elephants. I think that's going to be the last view of them that we have. I'm just going to go forward ever so slightly and just check. And the nice thing about having an open view like this is actually now we've got a perfect idea which way they're going, and they're not going to come and surprise us. Viewing elephants on foot is incredible. It's a sort of an adrenaline-creating experience, but really the best way to view them is from the vehicle, which is what James is doing.
We've just had the most spectacular experience. This little elephant here came walking up the road, and so I pulled my camera out and I was sort of taking pictures, and I wasn't watching him and he got bigger and bigger and bigger in the frame. And I said to Fergus, I can't see how close he is, but I've got full frame of him now. Fergus said 1 meter, and I looked up from the camera, and there he was standing at the bull bar. It was the most spectacularly wonderful experience, and Jamie was talking about it being exhilarating. It wasn't so, like now, this is not so much exhilarating because he's not about to attack us, but it is just mesmerizing, because there really is a deep sense of honor that comes with being approached by a wild animal without subterfuge. It's a little bit like, and I'm sure many of you know what this is like. Those of you who have kids, and those of you perhaps who don't, who have been approached by children, I know that when my nephews make an effort to come and say hello to me, or come and sit on my lap or something like that, there's that real feeling that you've of acceptance, because you know that it's done without any form of subterfuge. They don't want anything from you, they're just being nice. And that's exactly how I felt when this elephant came walking up towards us. And indeed how I feel with him standing here. Now, Anna-Marie, I've been wrestling with this question for the last little while. You say, what do I think has caused so many animals to have, or so many elephants to have arrived recently? I don't know. I think that we've discussed similar things before, and I'll share with you one theory. Sorry, just excuse me a second. I've got the fog in my throat. I have chased it off now. Anna-Marie, the little thing, I think it might easily have something to do with the fact that when they go into an area and they start feeding on things, I think what you'll find is that the plants in an area begin to produce the chemicals that will defend them against predation. And I think what happens is, if you have a great big herd of elephants in an area, I think you'll find that eventually just about all the plants in the area, and I think it's the same reason we don't see giraffe consistently, they will eat the trees and pressure the plants in an area to the extent that everything will start to produce its chemical defenses, and they won't taste very nice, and they'll be quite unhealthy, and the herd will move on to a place where that hasn't happened. So that is one of my theories as to why they move around like this. I don't see, they are now on the granitic, the vegetation type that they're in now, this kind of granitic Combretum woodland, or the red bush willow woodland, Combretum piculatum woodland, is very sort of, it's common. It's probably the most common vegetation type in the Kruger Park area. And so I'm not sure that there's a particular suite of plants here that they wouldn't get anywhere else. But maybe there's something, I mean, there are various different kinds of vegetation types, and maybe this particular vegetation type at this time of the year is particularly good eating, in the same way that they go up to the Gabbro Plains to graze on the grass in the early wet season. Grief, there goes a tree. And they certainly seem to have spent a huge amount of time eating silver cluster leaf over the last little while. Mike, you ask a very interesting question about about elephant population numbers and what keeps them in check. Mike, it's basically resources. So unlike us, they don't have the technology to overpopulate an area, and so what normally happens is that resources will keep them in check. When they run out of food, they run out of water, their recruitment rate or the birth rate will drop, and a certain number of old ones will die, youngsters will die, and that keeps them in check. I mean, obviously brings up the great discussion of, are there too many elephants in the area? Do we have too many elephants? And I don't believe that we do. I think it's a real nonsense that people think we have too many elephants in an area like this. I don't think we know what too many elephants is, and I think that if we stopped messing around with providing artificial water and that sort of thing, I think elephants regulate themselves. And John, you ask a very good question. That is a very human question. It's a nice one. You say, do they vary their diets? Do they make an effort to vary their diets? John, I'm not sure if they vary their diets or if they, I don't know if they vary their diets or if they, what am I trying to say here? Or if they just eat what's available, and because that changes, there's somebody in big trouble here behind us. Great consternation going on. Little ones chasing. Small ones just rushed over to its mother. And now there's a total change in atmosphere. Everyone stopped feeding. And now they're going back to it. That was very cool. So John, I think what it is that they just move around and eat what they need to, but there is quite a lot of evidence to show that elephants do self-medicate, that they will choose certain plants to eat specifically, based on what's available. So I don't know exactly if they're making an effort to vary their diets or if it just happens by default. Skip, you want to know if all these elephants are related in the same way that they are on the lion pride. Now Skip, you're only 12, which means that you're obviously pretty clued up for a 12-year-old about African wildlife, and that's great. Skip, they are normally, in a small herd of elephants, you'll find that the females are definitely related in exactly the same way as they are in a lion pride. So it'll be sisters and cousins and aunts. But I think in a very big herd like this, I think you'll find that there are some that are not related, and quite unlike, Skip, very unlike an elephant herd, elephants will adopt strangers. So if a stranger elephant comes along and, I don't know, maybe he's lost its herd or something like that, they will accept new ones into the herd, where of course lions will not do that. If you're not related to the pride, you cannot be part of the pride. And they will never accept a youngster. This is wonderful stuff. We are just having the best morning with these chaps. Hello. You see how careful they are with their tusks, even though those are pretty formidable weapons on the front of the face there. Oh, that is very sweet. They are very careful about not doing each other too much damage. Hello. Oh, you are very tough and strong. This is exactly what the one did just now. Right, apparently we're going to go across to Jamie now. She's got a beautiful butterfly to show you.
We've got a very beautiful butterfly to show you in the form of this pansy that is being so unbelievably obliging in just sitting completely still. They're one of my absolute all-time favorite butterflies. She's just enjoying some sunlight. I just love that blue spot that they have on them. Oh, she doesn't have it actually. No, she doesn't have it. I'm thinking of the blue pansy, not the yellow pansy. I'm speaking very softly and I'm only half looking at the butterfly because I can still see the elephant. I'm just keeping an eye on her because she's turned to face us. So the butterfly has provided us with a beautiful distraction while we've waited for them to move out into the open. But, can you see her over there, Seb? There she goes. Awesome. I'm pretty sure these elephants are part of the same herd that James is with, or at least close to the ones that James has. I can hear James's vehicle move every now and again. There they go. Oh, I just heard a big tree go over. So that's quite a big herd. The rest of them are all moving out now as well. What a perfect spot we found ourselves in. Not too close, wind is perfect. Nice open view of the elephants popping out every now and again. Sorry, Chantal, can you repeat that, please? I heard something about elephants, but... Tormented Zombie Owl has a question on... are elephants self-aware? Yes, they are. They're self-aware in the way that dolphins are self-aware. I don't know if anyone's ever put an elephant in front of a mirror. So basically what Tormented Zombie Owl, best name ever by the way, what Tormented Zombie Owl is wondering is, are they aware of themselves? Like if they, how do I put this? Because of course they're aware of themselves. Are they aware of their own body, their own individuality within a herd? And with a dolphin, if you put a dolphin, can you hear them feeding? If you put a dot on a dolphin and you put them in front of a mirror, they'll recognize that it's them, and they'll turn around and they'll try and wipe the dot off. Whereas if you put a dog or a cat in front of a mirror, I mean, you've seen all of those hilarious videos on YouTube of cats attacking their own reflections and puppies barking at their own reflection. They don't have the same level of self-awareness. Elephants and great apes have, and dolphins and whales, have nerve pathways in their brain that are very highly developed, the same ones that we have, devoted to emotional development and as well as, what's the word I'm looking for? Proprioception, their perception of the world around them. So I think if you stuck a dot on an elephant and put it in front of a mirror, it would be aware of what was going on. I mean, I don't know how well they'd see their reflection, but I would say that they are self-aware. That would be my suggestion. And there's so much intelligence within them, I think that's relatively standard to suggest. I picked up some lucky beans. Since we are in a situation where a little bit of luck will always come in useful. Some good luck charms from the lucky bean. As long as you don't eat them, should provide you with plenty of luck. Bright red and black, a colour in the bush that suggests, please don't eat me. I'll make you very ill. But I'm going to give one to Seb, and I'm going to give one to Herbie, and the rest of them I'm going to take to Kenya, because I'm not sure if you get lucky bean creepers in Kenya. I feel like we might need them. There you go, Seb.
Thank you.
Pleasure. There we go, one lucky bean for Seb. When I catch up with Herbie, I'll give him his. And the rest I would put in my pocket, but these silly useless shirts apparently decided that girls don't need pockets. Anyway, I won't even talk about that. We'll go back to the elephants. Just for one last view before we move off. I can hear lots of them moving to the south of us, so we've just got to decide which way do we go. One thing we won't be doing, no matter which decision we take in terms of which direction to go, we will not be running away from these elephants. And Ali would like to know, if you run from an elephant, will it run after you? Yes, it will. You have got to stand your ground in situations, unless you have got an immediate escape route, like you're literally running inside. An elephant will outpace you, it will chase you, and that applies to almost everything out here. And you cannot outrun anything, which is why we always say, whatever you do, don't run, because it's going to escalate a situation that could have been controlled into something that is a complete disaster. And elephants, if you run away from them, they are one creature that is going to chase you, and they will probably flatten you. So you don't run away from elephants, you don't run away from buffalo, you certainly do not run away from a lion or a leopard. You trigger that hunting instinct. And running can turn a mock charge, and I use mock in a very loose sense, a warning charge, into a very serious charge. It's the same occasionally with driving away. There's certain situations where, yes, it is necessary to remove yourself from the animal, but sometimes if you're really getting a serious warning charge, if you start to move then, you can trigger that instinct. In the same way when I drive past impala at the moment, male impala, if you switch on the vehicle next to them, they start to go into that rutting routine. You switch on your vehicle next to a male lion, at the certain time of the day, they'll start roaring. So you've got to be very careful of what your language tells that animal, because they don't know that's the sound of the, I suppose they do know it's the sound of the vehicle starting, but it can trigger something within them. Running is a terrible idea. An elephant can charge at 15 meters per second. It can cover 45 feet in 1 second. There is really, at top speed, there's really no point in running anywhere. What you need to do is be calm and back away slowly, and try and get to higher ground. Nikki, no. Playing dead doesn't work. I've heard certain stories of some people that... there's a part of me that believes that making yourself less threatening is occasionally a good way to go with elephant cows. I've done it before in a serious situation where I didn't have a choice, and it was that or really start to shout at her, and I just dropped down into a crouch, and she immediately relaxed because I was presenting a less threatening body language. But playing dead, elephants are curious, and if they're angry, then they're still angry. It's not like, I don't know how well it actually works with bears. Those of you with experience with bears can tell me. An elephant will walk up to you if you're playing dead. Have you ever seen an elephant playing with something? They'll kick you, they'll roll you around, they'll even put their head down and crush you. So no, please don't play dead if you're in a situation with an elephant. One thing that works quite well, I've heard, I've done it a few times with lions, throwing your hat at them, or a jacket, or something that smells like you, but is a good distraction, because that flapping movement will be something that might distract the animal long enough for you to get to a slightly safer point. So I've thrown my hat at lions a few times, when they've come charging out of the bush. Now I can't, because there's the microphone in it. It would be disastrous. The entire microphone pack. Chandra would kill me when I got back to camp. No, can't do that anymore. I'll just throw the radio at them. I know a few people who've thrown radios as well. Trackers that have thrown radios at elephants. It works. We found big things on foot, and I think it's probably time for us not to overstay our welcome. Tristan, true to form, is on the search for his favourite animal.
Well, we're trying to. Tingana is somewhere in this vicinity, which is a horrible thicket. He's walking around in very, very dense bush, and we're trying to get to him, but we just can't. He keeps going in front of us, and we just can't seem to manage to find a visual of him. But there's also tracks for Shadow and Cub also in this area, so I think all three of them might be together. Now, I'm just trying to stop and listen. If I can't hear maybe some birds shouting, we'll be able to pick him up, but where we are now is just so dense and so thick, it is very difficult to see, but I can't see anything at this stage. We've got two other vehicles that are helping us. It's all very, very exciting. The problem is, though, that it is probably the thickest block in the world and the thickest area in the world, and the perfect place if you're a male leopard to try and hide. Now, Craig, be careful of the buffalo thorns because they're everywhere. I'm going to try to see if we can't make our way through somewhere here. There's like a little deep ditch here that I'm trying to see if I can't get to, because he's gone in here somewhere. Where are you, Tingana? He was seen very briefly by one of the vehicles. They managed to see him kind of moving along this thicket, but it's so difficult inside here. It's almost impossible to get a vehicle around and through as quick as he is moving. So we know how Tingana likes to stride along and kind of try and get through. Now, Craig, you're going to have to be careful because this is all sharp thorns. So let's just try to see if we can't get through here. So this is like doing yoga, trying to get through this lot at the moment. It's just so dense. But I don't think we're going to have much luck here. I'm trying to just see if he's not here in front. There's a little sort of drainage line that he's been following, which is this little section here. I don't see any sign of him. Tingana, where are you? No, nothing here. So, as you can see, it's not exactly easy terrain to be able to try and find him. So I'm going to keep trying, and while we do that, I believe James is driving about and is hopefully driving with a lot more ease than what we are.
Hello, we have left those elephants. They moved off the road and they went wandering off down in here. We had another wonderful experience with that elephant. Came right up to the front of the car, and the youngsters, of course, are just the best because they don't feel they don't pose us any threat, of course, and they're just very inquisitive, which is very special. Now we've come towards the Twin Dams area to see what's going on there. We'll check around the Baboon Pan. There were rumours, as I'm sure Tristan's told you, of Hosanna coming north yesterday. But of course there were confirmed reports of lions going north this morning. And Tristan, who is no mug in the bush, failed to find even one track of them coming north, which means that it must have been complete and utter garbage. So whether or not Hosanna has decided that he is going to come to his favourite place at Baboon Pan or not, well, it remains to be seen. Well, Andy and Julia, you're in Los Angeles and you ask a very good question, and one to which we have a very good answer. You say, could feral cats survive in the wild out here? The answer is best given. I'm sad Brent isn't here to give you the answer, because Brent was on drive at Cheetah Plains the other day, and he found a marmalade-coloured ginger cat making its living at Cheetah Plains. So the answer is yes, they can. Would they do it successfully? I think you'll find that despite the slightly namby-pamby nature of protected cat life in the domestic situation, I think you'll find that despite that, their instincts to catch things and to defend a territory are so strong that yes, I think they'd probably survive for a while. I do think, of course, that they would probably eventually be taken out by predators that might eat you. I think it must be quite difficult to survive, and so something like a leopard, I suppose, would take house cats quite comfortably. But feral cats are tremendously damaging to an area like this, and especially to the African wildcat population. And of course, the Egyptians domesticated the African wildcat many, many thousands of years ago, and they gave rise to all of the domestic breeds that we get, as far as I'm aware, including the Siamese and the Burmese and the Persians and all those sorts of cats. But released back into the wild, of course, they compromise the genetic legacy and they compromise the genetic integrity of African wildcat populations, and that, of course, is a disaster. And so it's why feral cats are tremendously damaging to any ecological area if they are not sterilized. There is one lonely song for these days of bachelorhood. The grass is not always greener on the other side, old hippopotamus. And the mournful call of the emerald-spotted wood dove goes in the background. Alright, we're not going to sit here for long. We're going to pop around the corner, I think, and see if we can't drive Leadwood Road and see what is over there. Bill, you ask a very good question. I mean, we've had some excellent questions today. You say you've heard that hippo have got high density fat, and that is why they cannot float. And you want to know if there are any other animals that have the same sort of physiology. I imagine you'd probably find a similar version somewhere in the aquatic, or most aquatic mammals, such as the whales perhaps, or the manatees or dugongs. They might, or even the seals, they too might have some kind of high density fat that helps them to sink below the surface rather than float. But I don't know specifically, Bill. That's a really nice question. Thank you. Alright, I think let's press on from here. We don't have too much time left. It's amazing how warm it has suddenly become as we approach 9:15, well, 9:10 in the morning. And the world's most compelling country, South Africa. Yes, I know many of you won't agree with that, but you don't have to. I'm here, you see. Now we're going to hit on the Leadwood Road where Herbie and I had some tracks yesterday, and while we do that, let's go and find out what Herbie's impression via Jamie is of this morning's cat tracking activities.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch a word of that, but we're continuing on along our walk, strolling slowly but surely through quite a thick area of Bateleur Road. And we've been speaking about, well, I've been speaking about, because I'm getting nostalgic, different memories attached to different places. And this will always remind me of the time the wild dogs came through and they caught an Inyala about 10 meters away from where I am now, where Herbie's wandering stoically along just ahead of us, complete with my jacket that he keeps insisting on taking from me. And the Inyala was killed exactly here. We actually have to be quite careful walking through this particular area. The elephant's that way. Okay. Herbie's suggesting that we take this big game path along here. Do you want to go ahead, Herbsy? And we're just ducking and diving through elephant herds, and we don't want to make an approach to an elephant herd, because let me just, once Herbie moves in a little bit, and show you how thick it is. You're not going to see an elephant till you're basically on top of it in here. So we're following on quite a thick, a very well-defined game path that'll take us through the easiest route, because the animals know exactly which routes are the easiest. So I'm going to have to walk along here. And Oz, David, you want to know if we ever found ourselves in a dangerous situation on safari? A few. Closest charger, or scariest charger I ever had, was a black rhino who stopped from... Sure, she must have been... I'm not exaggerating. We went and looked at the tracks afterwards. She stopped from me to the base of the tree away, which when it's a ton of animal running towards you with her horn down, you know about. You definitely know about. So Elizabeth was one of my scariest chargers. I don't know why she was so cantankerous that particular day. Another example of an animal following around and actually following, getting downwind of us and taking us completely by surprise. Seb, there you go. Okay, you can go. You can walk. Seb has got a large 2-meter antenna that sticks out, and this is not the ideal place for him to have to try and film and try and walk through, but unfortunately it is our only route to get around and away from the elephants that are coming up through this way. So we'll just have to guide Seb very carefully through here. I've had a few close calls with elephant, quite a few close calls with elephant, and surprise hippos as well. Hippo like to surprise you where you least expect them, which is always an unpleasant moment. I can't lead Seb through here while he's filming. That's going to be impossible. A big thicket of tamboti trees that are climbing up. So what other dangerous moments have I had? Mostly it's been with elephants, buffalo. You occasionally wander across a surprise buffalo at very close quarters. I've never actually had a serious charge from a buffalo though. I know that Taylor has, but I have not as yet, touch wood, clutch my lucky beans, had a serious charge to face from a buffalo on foot. We're going to duck through this tamboti thicket. Let's go back across to James, who is really just searching for anything out there.
I am certainly searching for anything out here. We've come onto Leadwood Road and we found an impala. Oh my goodness, Fergus. Try and retain some sense of decorum as your excitement builds to fever pitch. The impala, of course, do not want to see us. They are running away because they are lily-livered. Where are you going? They've gone into a tamboti thicket in much the same way that Jamie has just gone into a tamboti thicket. It would not surprise me to find that it was a very similar tamboti thicket or quite close by. Well, let's pop around the corner here. Those elephants were moving down this way. I didn't really necessarily want to see them again, or I wouldn't say certainly wouldn't object to seeing them again. I was just rather hoping that we might see something with a bit more fur and spots, perhaps. Some alarm calling, rattling cisticulars here. There they are, top of the ziziphus tree, and one right here. You see them there? And a little long-billed crombeck in the tree there. That's what you got there. Adele, you're wondering when the rains will start and when it will rain for days on end. Adele, we've just gone into the dry season, so it's not going to rain for days on end for some time. And in fact, it very seldom does ever rain for days on end. Now, sometimes we get a cold front that'll come through for 4 or 5 days, and then it'll just drizzle and be miserable. But that's seldom. And then when we get big rain, it normally comes in the form of an enormous thunderstorm, which will then sort of disappear pretty much a few hours after it's deposited its load. So I'm not sure, I mean, we don't have a sort of monsoon season here, if you like, where it rains for days on end at all. And the next proper rains we'll have, I mean, we may get some very late season rains here, but we would expect this to be heading into the dry season, and we'd expect that we'd have proper rains again sort of at the end of November, the beginning of December this year. Now, we've got lots of bird sound here. Of course, they're all very difficult to see. And there's some wax spills in that tree over there, Ferg. You might try and catch them. And this is a typical sort of bird party. It's a whole lot of did you see there some in there? Yes, you did. You've got a bird in there. A whole lot of sort of insect-eating birds that are moving together as a party. I'm not sure what that one is. It is just some flickering in amongst the black monkey thorn. Oh, well done, Ferg. That's a grey-headed sparrow, is it? Can't even see properly. No, it's not. It's a blue wax. It's a blue waxbill. Well spotted. That bird is minute, everybody. It's only about 3-4 centimeters long. No, a bit bigger than that. Maybe 8 centimeters. There it goes. And that's not an insect eater, of course. That's a seed eater. Now, Daniel, it's a very interesting time to ask this question. You say, do we see the pied crow in this area? Not often, but they do come from time to time. I actually heard one yesterday while we were sitting with some elephants yesterday. One flew over the top of my head and went, "Quah, quah," in its sort of crow-like fashion. And of course a crow is, well, a sort of harbinger of doom, which it certainly was for my afternoon game drive, where we saw absolutely nothing. Let me show you a picture of a pied crow, everybody, in case you're confused as to what it might look like. A pied crow, well, it looks like a crow that's carrying a pie. It doesn't look like it. That's the worst joke I've ever made in my life. And there it is. Corvus albus, the pied crow, common, widespread resident. It's the most common crow species that we'll find here in South Africa. Right, that is the pied crow. Not to be confused with the green oriole, which I'd really like to see. But it's only found in one place in Mozambique, in Gorongosa National Park. Isn't that a magnificent looking creature? I'd love to see that bird. Righty, on we go. Continue along the way. And D.B. Kruger, you want to know if there are martial eagles out here? Absolutely there are. They have the largest territories of any birds. They are the largest eagle species that we get here. So yes, completely, there are definitely martial eagles around here. We do see them, I mean, we don't see them very frequently. The last great sighting we had was during our TV shows on the Mother's Day weekend, when Jamie had a juvenile martial eagle, and unfortunately it was during an advert break, but it swooped in over a little flock of, what do you call it, a flock? Yes, a flock of Egyptian geese, 2 parents and their 10 little goslings. And so we were just watching close in on the geese, and they had just moved into the water, and the parents were going quack, 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 which is what they do most of the time. It just seemed like they were a little upset about something, and then suddenly all of the goslings and the 2 adults just went poof and sunk below the surface of the water, and this eagle came swooping through the frame. And there was a martial eagle trying to grab a gosling out of the water, which wasn't very nice of it, of course. It was astounding to watch. So we do get them from time to time. The rock monitor population takes a pasting from them. Now, I'm not sure where Jamie is or what she's looking for, or what indeed she has been looking for, but I think whatever it is she's still doing now.
That was a very accurate description, because we haven't really been sure what we're looking for. I can tell you where we are. We're about 50 meters or so from where Karula had Shongile and Hosana, between Battalion and Nyala Road South, for those of you that know the geography of this area, in the most beautiful patch in between 2 drainage lines, which we talk about all the time, basically 2 river systems. And this is one area where I've noticed there's a lot of activity of porcupines and aardvarks. And this is just one such example of evidence, basically, that porcupines are in this area. And this porcupine has come through, dug, using its very powerful sense of smell. It's smelt that there's something underneath the surface of the soil, dug down deep, and found, and you can actually see the scrape marks of the incisors. There, that's a really good example over here. Let me point with a piece of grass because my fingers are too thick and stubby. Here is the mark of the 2 incisors, because of course a porcupine is the largest rodent that occurs in here in southern Africa, with a gap in between where it's been scraping its teeth on this particular thing. And I think this is actually a very, it's quite hard soil. I think this is actually a very large example of this particular type of plant. See if I scrape it, look at all the moisture within it. You can actually see it gleaming. And this is a storage organ of an African potato. So this is an African potato. It is edible. It is something that you could eat if you were a human, if you were a human being, which I assume you all are. That was a silly sentence. Something that you can eat, something that is often used in traditional medicine, dug up and used, and even at one point suggested by our world-renowned previous ex-health minister as a alternative treatment for HIV, which of course it is not, but it was something in a moment of national embarrassment for South Africa that was suggested instead of antiretrovirals. It does have medicinal uses though. It's very high in starch. Here's an example of a part that the porcupine has dug up already, and it's gone, because it's been out in the sun, it's gone sort of quite white and powdery in texture. But if I snap it open, which I'll do in a second, it's got quite a spongy, look, there we go. It almost has got the texture of a fresh coconut. And it smells exactly like a raw potato. It's exactly what it smells like. A raw potato that's been soaking in water to stop it from getting brown. It's exactly what it smells like. So something that a human being could eat. You've got to be careful though, because I've already told you porcupines can eat tambuti. They often eat the root systems of balanites trees. So you can't eat everything that a porcupine can eat, but this is one example of something that if you were stuck out here would be quite a good source of... Oh goodness, this soil is quite hard. No wonder the porcupine gave up. You could actually dig up as a source of starch and as a source of water. This potato, this bulb of this plant, is probably, if I had to guess, I would say it's quite a big one. I would say it's this big inside there. So about larger than a baseball. And that's going to be of huge use to somebody who's stuck out here desperately looking for sustenance and for water, because there's so much moisture in here. Something that Steph would perhaps squeeze out and drink, and he probably has, but not something I'm going to be doing. I know that there's a cup of warm tea waiting for me when I get back to camp. I'm not going to go and drink any African potato water. I have eaten it though. I've eaten it before. Tastes much like it smells, like a raw potato. Of course you're not meant to eat raw potatoes of the kind that we eat and cook and eat, but this you can. I don't know if you can cook it though. Imagine you can. Probably tastes a great deal better when it's fresh. I'm in a tree. I got such a dose of karma for laughing at people, or talking about laughing at people who walk and don't know where to walk. I got such a bad buffalo thorn wrapped around my leg. Vanessa, as I just mentioned, you wanted to know if it tastes like potato. You wanted to know the answer to that. It does. It tastes like a raw potato. Again, you're not meant to eat raw potato, but it's got that texture and it tastes just like it smells. Not to be confused, and of course now I want to find one, I'm not going to. Not to be confused with a potato bush. There we go. I think that's one over there. A potato bush is something completely different. It doesn't have that storage bulb underneath it. Instead, it produces flowers that smell exactly like cooking potato. Not edible, but something that smells very nice. Okay, let's go and find out what surprise James has up his sleeve for you.
Hello everybody, here I find myself out of the car, and I was arrested momentarily by these pink flowers, and I think that they are kalinkos. A different form of kalinko, not the kalinko, crassula. No, kalinko lanceolata that we've been looking at, they're not the same, but they're definitely from the same family. So I will bring you one. They're succulent, and I'll bring you a leaf too, so that we can examine the leaf, because that will help us tell us exactly what it is. And while I walk back to the car, that whole herd of elephants that we were watching earlier is just around here. They haven't spotted me after the car, thankfully. So I don't feel too afraid. But they are around, and I can hear them feeding through the bushes. Here it is. It's rather attractive, really. It's the only one I've seen here so far. And then the leaf, you can see, is a sort of typically succulent leaf. I'm not sure I've ever seen any animal eating them either. But I assume that these flowers must be attracting some sort of pollinating insect or other. Very nice. Kalinko. Put it over there for you. As we continue on our merry way. Starting to get quite warm now. Breeze is coming up. The birds are almost certainly going to start flying now. I saw Basileia taking to the air earlier. And now I'm plugged in and ready to go. Isn't that pretty? I really like that kind of almost luminous orangish pink. Very unfashionable colour to like, but I like it a lot. Makes me feel happy in my heart. Oh, what's a nice question, Skip, in Texas. You're asking about pine trees and if we have trees with needles on them. Skip, we don't. You know, we don't have naturally occurring what we call conifers here. Well, we've got a few, but they're very distantly related from to the conifers that you have in the northern United States. And I think that you'd find, in fact, throughout northern Eurasia. We don't have any of those here naturally occurring. All of the plants here are broad-leafed angiosperms. Now, you don't need to remember all these terms, Skip. Well, you're 12, so you probably can remember them now. But an angiosperm is a flowering plant, and they've got a whole different kind of physiology going on in their systems. I nearly said their bodies, but I suppose body would have been the wrong term. In their systems, from those of the gymnosperms, which are what all of the conifers are. And gymnosperms don't make flowers, and they've got that completely different kind of leaf structure and different way. They produce cones normally, and they've got a completely different way of surviving. Now, you can plant conifers here, you can plant pine trees and they will grow, and indeed there are huge forests of pine trees that they use for timber out here, but they've all been planted by people. So that's a really nice question. They don't exist naturally in Africa. We do get a number of evergreen trees, but none of them are conifers like yours. Now, here are the elephants. They're just about to cross the road in front of us. It's going to ease very slowly along. Hello. Let me just move slowly forward and then I shall turn off. There they are. And very, very calm. Is this not our special herd? Is this not the half-trunk herd? Let me just wait and see. As soon as the cow on the right-hand side lifts her trunk, we'll be able to tell. She's digging, looking for roots, maybe African potatoes like Jamie. It is, this is them. This is the half-trunk herd. And Maritza, you're asking a very interesting question that is, again, not easy to answer. You say, why is it that elephant cows have a different shaped head from the males? I don't know for sure. I have some recollection reading somewhere that it might have something to do with the transference of low frequency sound to each other, and they communicate more than the males. I don't buy that. I think it is most probably, Marissa, because in the same way that buffalo horns are designed differently from the female's horns, they're probably absorb shock better as a rounded structure than as a square structure. And that would certainly hold true, I think, from a physics point of view. And elephants, big bull elephants, of course, fight with each other quite a lot, which means that their heads must take a lot more by way of percussive blow or concussive blow than the females will. And so the females probably don't need quite as rounded a head. You can see this cow, who's our half-trunk cow, has got quite a square head. Once we've seen her trunk, of course. And a bull won't have a square head. Yeah, a bull's much more rounded. So I would say that's why. And Rebecca, you're wondering why this herd is called the half-trunk herd. Well, if you look at this elephant that we're looking at now, she's the matriarch of this little herd of 4. And you can see she's missing, it's not quite half her trunk, but she's missing the bottom third or so of her trunk. And we met them around about, I think it was this time last year, that we began watching them and enjoying them. And it's just a nice story because she's young. She's just over 20 years old, and she's got, I think, 2 offspring in this herd and 1 sibling with her. And we don't know her history, we don't know why it is that she's come to be on her own in this little herd, or why this little herd is sort of so quite on its own, but why it's so small, and why as such a youngster she's come to lead a herd as opposed to being in a much larger herd. But she's also very relaxed, she's very confiding, she's given us some wonderfully special sightings. This is another question we get asked quite often, and I used to think the answer was yes until I was put right. You say, do elephants go through a period of menopause? They don't, strictly speaking, no. But you will find that their breeding slows down as they get towards the end of their age, more so than it would with, say, lions or with leopards or any of the other creatures out here, which normally sort of drop dead virtually as they stop breeding. And there is a reason for that. The reason is, of course, that they need to be able to transfer knowledge. Same reason that human beings go through menopause. Our old have a very valuable role to play in the transferal of knowledge to the younger generations. And we think elephants have the same, but they will breed just about till they die, although that breeding will slow down. Apparently, now I forget exactly the list of animals, there are only 3 or 4 other animals in the whole world that go through menopause. There are human beings. I think there are 2 whale species, and one of them might be orcas, and one of them, I forget which other whale species it is, goes through some form of menopause. And I know also that the chimpanzees certainly go through, if not a full menopause, there is a period after which they have finished breeding that they will still survive. But it is very unusual, and it's a fascinating, I must say it's a fascinating subject to me, because it speaks to all sorts of, or asks all sorts of questions about why animals would need it and what possible purpose there could be for it, because it does seem so strange from an evolutionary point of view. But for the fact that if in a family a matriarch or patriarch can pass on useful information to the next generation, well, then there would be a very good evolutionary reason for it. Right, we're going to leave the half-trunk elephant here, and I'm starting to get a bit peckish, so I think I'm going to start heading for the west, while Jamie is standing in a pile of poo.
I am standing in a pile of poo. I am standing in the middle. Well, not quite, actually. I'm not in the middle. I'm standing on a rhino midden and reveling in the idea of being tall for once in my life. I've been trying to figure out, so this is a white rhino midden. This is basically like, essentially rhino Facebook. and have got about as much content on it as well. Now, this is where all rhinos will come and defecate in the area. So as they walk along this road, they come and deposit their dung, females, little ones, and of course the big dominant bull that's scraped his foot as well. So that's what big dominant bulls do, only they will do that. They'll come and they'll defecate in the midden, and they'll create this enormous scrape mark that actually extends all the way along here. So he's actually walked along doing this all the way along. And that basically, oh dear, this shoelace, that's basically transferred his scent onto his feet and made everybody in the area aware that this is his spot and no one else's. But the game I've been playing, well, I don't know if it's a game. You know, you get those game shows where you have to, or sort of win a car, kind of a raffle, where you have to guess how many balls are inside of a car or whatever it is. I've been trying to work out, because this rhino midden has been here for years. This is relatively fresh. The stuff near Seb's foot is years old. Years and years. Tristan's trying to call Herbie on our FC radio, which definitely isn't going to work. Sorry, Trist, just stand by one. The question is, how many individual dung balls make up this rhino midden? Obviously, it's been spread out, but for some reason I can't help wondering exactly, it's years and years worth of poo. Exactly how many balls of dung are in this midden? Hundreds? Thousands? Many? Lots? Something like that? How many do you think, Seb? 1,000.
I would say 2,318.
2,318, says Seb. That is fantastically accurate.
Just at a glance, huh?
What about 2,816?
Oh, I didn't see the one you sitting on.
Oh, the one I'm sitting on. Oh, okay, well, there we go. There's the missing pile of dung. Those are the sorts of absurd questions I find myself pondering. I'm going to send you back over to James, who's probably going to talk more sense than I am right now.
We are having a spectacular sighting here. This cow, either the oldest daughter or maybe it's a young bull. I think the oldest offspring of the half-trunk cow has been standing here in front of us now, and it's impossible to get a picture, of course, because she's too close. It's just a full frame. It's a waste of time. And the little one came right up here, and I thought it was going to sort of grab my foot at one stage. Still right here, pulling that typical elephant face. Look. But this other one then tossed, just as we were being linked to, tossed one hesitates to use the word fistful, but a sort of, the end of her trunk, a handful of sand at us. We have had some really very special elephant sightings today. Oh, yes. It's Fergus you don't like, is it? Now, this behavior is not to be encouraged, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want to create a stink by starting the car. She's not big enough to create trouble for us, and so I'm not going to worry too much about it. But what I am going to do quite carefully is watch the big cow to the right-hand side, because if this cow or this young bull gets sufficiently irritated, she will too. And there it goes. They're now moving off together. She's obviously said, come on, that's enough nonsense. Let's move off. Leave them alone. They're not doing you any harm. And there they've gone. That was just exceptional. I'm going to show you where that little calf stood. You could see, obviously, she was smelling the front of the car. That little calf, before you came to us, was standing over here. That was very cool. Marvellous, 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 marvellous. Ah, yes. God, I think we can satisfactorily go home now. Now, I'm not really sure what else to say about it. Was that, you know, that you run out of adjectives eventually. And Roshni, you're wondering about their ears and whether they are bigger than the Asian elephant's ears because of the heat. It's not so much the heat as the sun, I think. It gets very, very hot in India and in Sri Lanka and of course in Thailand. It also gets massively humid there. And what Roshni is referring to, of course, is the fact that elephants in Africa use their ears extensively to try and cool down, keep the brain cool. I think you'll find that there's far less shade here, and that's why you find they have the much bigger ears. You'll find Asiatic elephants have got other methods of staying cool that perhaps have not evolved in the African elephant, but I think because they tend to live in more forested areas than they do in Africa, you'll probably find that they have the smaller ears, and so I think it's the lack of shade. That would be my guess. Also, the fact that we have much poorer soil in this area means that the elephants are not eating vegetation nearly as rich as they would be, or rich in nutrients as they would be in Asia, which means that they must feed for longer. And it's one of the reasons that African elephants have been fairly hopeless as working animals. They've got to eat a lot more apparently than Asiatic elephants, and I wonder if the fact that they have to eat more means that they cannot rest as much, which means that they therefore produce more heat and therefore have to lose more heat. But there are elephants all over this reserve right now, and it is the most magnificent pleasure. There are a whole lot more in front of us now. I think they're probably going to eventually make their way to Buffelshoek Dam. We're going to try and turn off this road eventually, but we ain't going to do that until we're allowed to. Hello, hot dog. You say, what do we all eat back at camp when we get home? Hot dog? With any luck, it won't be hot dogs. With any luck, it will be a delicious array of eggs and bacon and perhaps the odd mushroom also. I might have some yogurt. We eat really well. We have the most wonderful chef, and we actually shot we didn't, Kirsten and Fergus shot a story about her yesterday, and so in the not too distant future we'll edit that together and you'll be able to meet Amanda and her remarkable culinary skills. So there's a little sneak peek. She cooked us lamb racks yesterday, not hot dogs. Are you a fan of hot dogs, Fergus?
No, but I do like anything that you can put chili sauce on.
Right. You like anything that you can put chili sauce on, so you would eat a hot dog with sufficient chili sauce.
Indeed.
Yes.
I find it a means for
Yes.
enjoying the chili.
A means to imbibing chili sauce. Good. Very nice. Well, that's going to be the end of our little drive, everybody. We've had a wonderful time with the elephants, still a bit cat-free at the moment, but we'll try and rectify that this afternoon. Thank you, Fergus.
Thank you.
Well done, good job. Big thanks to Tristan and Jamie, of course, and their assorted camera operators, Chantel in the final control, and, of course, I'm not sure who was helping her today, probably Louise. I think it was Louise. All right, everyone, we'll see you later. Thank you for coming on Drive with us, and we'll see you this afternoon.